Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed. Just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm back. Dan Sostek, did you miss me?
Well, yeah, we always miss you, Brian. We always miss you. You can't be missed if you don't leave.
I've been Epler. Eric Epler's here with us too. Epler, I don't think you're much of a morning person either, but you guys have been scheduling these things too early for.
No, I think morning should start at like 10:30. That's what I think. I think it's ridiculous. Anything before that, nothing good happens before that. I mean, you think about it. You don't even go to an amusement park at 8 o'clock and get on the ride. You know what I mean? They don't open till 10. They're sensible. I mean, nothing good happens before 10:30 a.m.
Well, you guys, I've missed about a month of the podcast here. You guys have been scheduling them early on me, so I've been out of commission, but I'm back. I'm excited to be back. A lot has happened since I was last here on here with you guys. Dan went out to the spring fling. He saw a lot there. We'll probably touch on some of the things he saw again in terms of a couple of angles we'll get to. Today, we're going to get into some sort of Mid Penn storylines. I think next week we'll probably get into some more statewide type storylines maybe. But to kick it off, I wanted to say, again, lots happened since the left. We've had sort of another quarterback who has had a couple good years emerge on the scene statewide. But I wanted to start with Kemon Spell. Out McKees Rocks, right? McKeesport. It really blown up, guys. 2027 Penn State commit. We talked about him on here before. I mean, I love his explosiveness on film, and I think he just went turning some crazy times at Penn State. Dan, I know you've been paying attention to him a lot too. That kid's going to be special.
Yeah, I mean, that's an area too, the McKees Rocks, that produces some really good football players. I think most recently, if you remember, Khaleke Hudson from down there was a heck of a football player, and DeMar Hamlin, I think, is initially from there before going to Central Catholic. There always seems to be someone from McKees Rocks that just kind of stands out, and Spell certainly looks that part. I mean, the buzz has been kind of crazy about him recently. A top 10 player in the 2027 class. We get a lot of good players. I feel like it's every few years maybe we get a guy that's in the top 10 just because there's so much talent in Florida, Texas, California, etc. But I think that just goes to show you what kind of explosive talent there is, he has. Penn State's running back room is filled with PA talent. They've pretty much any good running back out of PA, it feels like they pretty much land. So we won't know what that running back room will look like when he gets there in 2027 because they have – who they have? They got Messiah Mickens. They've got Jabri Wallace-Coleman. They've got Tyke Hayes. I don't know if David Davis is going to play running back there or linebacker, but they have him as well.
Like he's going to be a DB, I think.
Yeah. They just have so much like their running back room – they don't even need to leave the state. They still have Nick Singleton there. He'll be gone by, obviously, the end of this year. But
Quentin Martin's still there. Quentin Martin is one of the top. And if you look, not to cut you off, but Epler, Dan and I were texting about this. So Penn State, pat on the back. They really went and got the best running backs from all around the state. Tyke Hayes from Aliquippa, Jabri Wallace-Coleman from Emotep. He was a Georgia commit. And Georgia doesn't offer running backs who can't play. Messiah Mickens from Harrisburg, Kemon, who I think might be the most explosive back in the state. They're loaded up. And then people forget about Quentin Martin, who was, a nationally ranked recruit too, who's still there at running back.
You just sort of forget about him because in high school it was hard to, we didn't know. Like in my head, I still think of him as ATH as an athlete, but I think he is pretty established as a running back.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dan. And I mean, truthfully, he could find a home defensively too. I mean, he's that kind of versatile athlete that you can do, and maybe that's the case with him. But Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is going to be a really crowded running back room. But if you really look, you guys watch a lot of college football like I do. Now these pro style offenses too, and all these offenses are opening things up and they're airing it out, and that's really how they compete. It seems like there's only a dozen college football programs that actually teach defense anymore or play defense. So it's all about scoring points in this wide open offense. But you look at Penn State; they really are a rush heavy offense. They're rush first, and if you're a running back within 2 or 3 hours from Penn State, why would you not look toward James Franklin's program? I mean, I think it's a great situation for running backs. I mean, look what the two-headed monsters are doing there now. I mean, my God, they're both Heisman candidates. So I really like the fact that they're staying in-house per se. It's going to be a lot of ball. They're going to need a lot of balls passed around to these guys.
You cannot knock Penn State, as Dan was saying. You count Nick Singleton still there too. You cannot knock Penn State on their recruiting of their running back room and who they've got from Pennsylvania. They've kept the best.
And I caught up with
Pennsylvania.
I caught up with Messiah too at the spring fling about it because Stan Drayton was at the spring fling. He's the new running back coach, his former Temple head coach. Because that was a big storyline. Juwan Sider goes to Notre Dame, and he's been pretty much the architect of building this running back room. All those running backs commit in large part due to him. I mean, I'm sure the Kotelnicki offense helps. James Franklin's a good recruiter, but it seemed, at least, from a guy who tangentially reads about this recruiting, is that it was a lot of Juwan Sider and that relationship he had with those kids. So when he left, there was some side-eyeing. Notre Dame went after Messiah Mickens, but it sounds like they're all in on Stan Drayton, who's been a great running back coach elsewhere before he's been at pretty much every major program before becoming Temple's head coach. But Messiah said he talks to Stan Drayton every single day. And he also said that running back room, they're all close and tight. And it's easy to say that now before you get to college. And then some of the challenges pop up a little bit about having to share the rock and be part of that team. But he says that they're all kind of bought in on the vision of, we're going to have a lot of good running backs and a lot of them are going to get the ball. And it's not like they're just blowing smoke. It's been like that for years with Franklin. They've had Katron Allen and Nick Singleton basically 50-50 backfield like throughout the past 2-3 years. So I think it's going to be fun to watch because I think they're the only two guys that I think kind of are overlapping skill sets are Messiah and Tyke. And those are still two guys that I'd like to have them both in my running back room. So they'll find ways to get them all in the field.
So Dan and I have these conversations a lot, and I wanted to pitch this out here. You look at running backs across the state real quick. I mean, who are you taking as the number one back? For me, I'm probably highest on Keymon, but I'll tell you guys, Messiah Mickens had a slow start to last year, and he really came on and ended up winning Gatorade Player of the Year. I went and watched this film. I love it. He got the explosiveness back across the second half. The vision's there. He runs hard. And I know he's been working out with Lance Dean, who's Micah Parsons' trainer, hard. I think he's going to have a huge senior year. But who would you guys put up there? Who's your pick? Or is there a wild card you might want to throw in? That's the top running back in Pennsylvania. Who do you think is going to be the best running back this year?
When you're looking at like pure talent and things like that, it's hard not to look at Spell. But he is still obviously a really young player. And in high school, sometimes it's almost easier for these big bruising backs to just turn around and hand the ball to them 45 times, right? I agree that Messiah really looked like one of the best running backs in the state towards the end of last year. And then the thing is, too, we're always going to find out as the season starts and as the season goes, hey, look, St. Joe's Prep has some new running back that had 0 carries the last 2 years. That is all of a sudden one of the very best players in the entire country. So I'll go with Kamon Spell. I'll just defer to the rankings right now and go with Kamon Spell. I know I've heard some good stuff about Armand Hill out in West Mifflin. I think he's a West Virginia commit. But yeah, I'll go with Spell and Mickens.
Yeah, Mickens to me though, I don't know. It's hard for me to overlook Mickens on the defensive side. Like I'm keep projecting him to somehow find a hole on the defensive side somewhere at Penn State because I think
I can't see that. I just can't.
Well, I'm
too
just
small.
Saying, that's the thing. Like, he's a tweener when you talk about height. He's a tweener when you talk about size. Like to kind of put him as a defensive end or maybe he has to sort of morph into an outside linebacker or something like that, or even a middle linebacker. Like I don't think that's the case, Dan. I think you're right. I mean, obviously he's being recruited as a running back, so that's where he starts. But I've come to think of him now as a defensive juggernaut first and foremost. Now, at least at the high school level.
Yeah, that's true.
I really like Coleman. His first name is obviously I'm losing his first name.
Sire.
Yeah, Sire at Imhotep Institute. Those guys, it's either Dan mentions Bezos Prep, or it's either a guy at LaSalle, or it's either Imhotep Charter. There's always one guy that sort of just takes charge. I think it was Jabri Wallace Coleman last year. And I think Coleman's a kid that could really be a difference maker at the next level. 6 foot, 200 pounds. I mean, that's a perfect size at the next level for a running back. He's obviously going to grow and pack on some muscle then. But he's a guy that I would really be looking at least as far as this year.
Yeah. And we didn't even mention Nazir Jones Davis, who, like, I think kind of when you like fall into the recruiting stuff, Nazir's starting to get some Division I offers, but in terms of productivity, there's no player, I think, in the state that had a better postseason than Nazir Jones Davis. That dude just wrecked some really good defenses and looked like a Division I player. He could very well be the most productive running back in the state this year.
I'll tell you what, Dan, Nazir reminds me so much of the progression and the progress that Chase Edmonds made in high school his last 2 years. And I think and it was just dynamic to watch. And I think Nazir is a lot like that. And obviously we all know Chase went on to an unbelievable career at Fordham, and then obviously still toiling around in the NFL. So I see Nazir in that path. I really do. I think he's that kind of player. He's such an impact player. It's crazy. I mean, you can make the argument, even though they had Stone Saunders, chucking it around to some unbelievable wide receivers and made that offense go. You could make an argument that Nazir, had he not done what he did last year, they would not have won states.
Well, that's why we put him on all PA first team, because there were some running backs who had better numbers than him statewide, but they wouldn't have won the state championship without him. I'll say he's a great high school running back. He's also, I think, going to be a good Division I running back, but he's getting offers from like Eastern Michigan. I think he's kind of in that next tier simply because I don't think he's quite as explosive as like Messiah and those guys.
I agree. I'm talking about productivity this year more than next level projection.
When you go turn on that Messiah film, it leaves no doubt. He's very explosive off the end. Like, but right. It's that same. It's that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not tearing into his offensive abilities, but I'm saying as far as being a dominant football player, like the first thing I look at when I think of Messiah now is just what he can do on defense. I mean, again, he's a tremendous running back. Don't get me wrong.
Well, they can't block him coming off the end because he's so explosive. But his freshman year, we did the story on him because he had an offer from Texas A&M before he played a varsity down. And so we start watching this film his freshman year, and I sort of compared him then to Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he's a little squatty, kind of compact. He's going to get bigger. He's like 5'10", probably about 200 pounds now. He's a thick kid, right? He got injured his sophomore year. There was a time, like 4 games in his sophomore year, when he was averaging like 18 yards a carry. Yeah. Then he hurt his ankle. And pretty much for the next half of the season, and then several games into his Harrisburg career, which Harrisburg also had a lot of mouths to feed. They had 3 really good running backs last year. He wasn't quite as explosive, in my opinion. But, man, when you turn on the film, I see the Ezekiel Elliott back in him, man. He's bouncing stuff. The vision's there and the explosion, and he's running hard. I'm really impressed with him. So, like I said, I think he's going to have a monster year. I think he's probably going to have the biggest year. But Keemon Spell, I love that kid, too. He's just electric. And good on Penn State for getting these guys. Another one real quick, Epler, we're going to get to the Mid Penn stuff you got, but Dante Carr, Dan sent me, it's kind of neat. You don't see a lot of people coming out of Minersville.
Yeah.
And he's not a quarterback that we've talked about at all. We've talked about the big dogs really in the senior class, which has been our guy out at LaSalle College, Gavin. Why am I forgetting Gavin's last name all of a sudden, guys? Help me out, Dan. Sidwar. I talked to Gavin a lot, and I guess I'm getting old, guys. Gavin Sidwar out at LaSalle College. Peyton Falzone at
Nazareth.
The Penn State commit, and the Samaj Bills. at Roman Catholic who was getting Alabama offers as a freshman. He's kind of not getting those same kind of offers now, but we know he's a heck of a quarterback. I think that's because he's probably not quite as big body frame wise. But then Dante Carr, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's listed as an athlete, but he's a quarterback at Minersville. He's committed to UCF. And I know Dan was looking at him. It's kind of a neat story, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blanking on name. I apologize who tweeted it. It was Dylan from on 24/7. I think said he's kind of from outside of Minersville. He basically tweeted that in that area that when he was growing up that they got excited about a kid went to Lehigh to play baseball, and that was sort of the big news in the area. So for a quarterback to go to a Big 12 program like UCF, I think is a big deal for that area. And you look at who recruited him. The recruiter was Mackenzie Milton, who I don't know if any of you remember him at UCF. He was the one with that horrible leg injury, but he was a really good player there. UCF always has good quarterbacks, so they know what they're looking for. Like every year, it feels like UCF finds a quarterback that fits their system, that can do what they want. And you look at his stats last year, Dante Carr threw for 22 touchdown passes and ran for 1,182 yards, standing at 6'3". There's a lot you can work with there. So that's a really cool story because a lot of times you get these quarterbacks from these big programs and in these smaller schools. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really exactly know where Minersville is. I'm sure Ep does because he's been everywhere across the state.
Right outside of Tamaqua, baby. I'll be there Sunday. Coal region.
Yeah. So it's always cool to see if you've got the talent nowadays, especially with how easy it is to get your huddle stuff out there. People will see stuff. You get the camps and stuff, and people will find you because maybe in the 90s, if you're playing in Minersville or something, you just kind of find your way to whatever school you can and see what happens. So I think, was he an all-state player? I forget if he was all-state or not.
I think he was just outside. I can't recall right off the top of my head. I don't think so. I know he had dozens of offers, and it wouldn't be what you would call Power 5, obviously. Lehigh, I think, was offered him. I think Georgetown, like he had a couple Ivy Leagues involved. But, in that region, Dan, you're right. I mean, specifically, it's either you get a tremendous athlete once in a while that plays, 5 different spots as an all-state caliber guy, or you get linemen and tight ends and middle linebackers in that neck of the woods. I mean, that's what they produce. They're hard-nosed football players. And for a guy from Minersville to get noticed and obviously pick UCF, that does tell you something about sort of how this kid obviously handles his business, and obviously it's sort of a breakout for that neck of the woods. So congrats to him.
Another quarterback too, real quick, guys. I know we haven't mentioned on here. We had another D1 quarterback commitment from in the state across the past week. Was a kid named Xavier Stern from Germantown Academy, 6'6", 215, committed to Rutgers. We know Elias Koch from Harrisburg is committed there to play wide receiver. He's got the frame. Haven't watched a lot of his film. I say all that to say it's going to be a really kind of exciting year. I mean, Dan was even sending me from out west photo of Ryan Messina out west. Elizabeth Ford. He's got some nice film. It's going to be an exciting year for quarterbacks, I think. And we got some coming on late here who are emerging after their films got out there. It's going to be a fun year.
Those Interact guys, like those guys from I actually went to Germantown Academy in middle school, but those Interact kids are all, you kind of like forget because you get the Malvern Prep kids every now and then. You get the Germantown Academy kids, and you to really determine kind of where they stand versus the kids that play PIA, because we don't get out to their games as much. We don't see them on like the playing field going against these other kids, but there's a good history from the Germantown Academy's biggest rivals, Penn Charter. They put Matt Ryan into the NFL, probably NFL Hall of Fame. So there's a decent track record there. And I believe Stern is also 7-on-7 teammates with Elias Koch. So I feel like all these guys are 7-on-7 teammates at some point now. But so there's some continuity there with that Rutgers connection.
Yeah, I gotta go. Like I said, I gotta go watch this film. I haven't seen him play at all, but I saw him pop up. It's gonna be a fun year for quarterbacks. I don't know who I would take as the number one if I had to pick one. Salzone, I've been watching a lot of his throwing and stuff with his quarterback coach he does. He can run pretty good, got a big arm. But I love Sidwar too. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have a preference there, but I think it's going to be a fun year.
Any quarterback that's gone against that St. Joe's prep defense and come out on the other side with a win, like, I'm going with that kid. I just think that's, at least in terms of, I think he's ready to play. I think Falzone's super toolsy and super interesting, but I think he's a guy that you're going to have to work with a little bit to get ready to play. I think Sidwar is going to be a guy that he's going to come in, he's going to learn the offense and be ready to kind of go out there and sling the ball.
And Sidwar is a Missouri commit up, and he's got Joey O'Brien to throw to, so that helps.
And he's already running a high-profile offense too there, and obviously looks tremendous doing it. I mean, yeah, I think you have to give the nod to Sidwar right now for where both of those guys are at. But Falzone is such an incredible athlete too that you wonder if he's going to be kind of like Bo was utilized by James Franklin there the last 2 seasons or whatever it was behind Drew Aller. So. Yeah, I just, Sidwar is just, to me, just a step ahead, and rightly so, should be considered the top quarterback in this recruiting class.
That's a good comparison with Bo Pribula from Central York and Falzone. I think Falzone's probably a little bit bigger, though, and probably has a little bit stronger arm. So you put him, Bo, I think, could have done good things in that offense, if he didn't have Aller, who a lot of people think is going to be, a top, maybe the number 1 overall pick next year, which we'll see. I've been up and down on him. We'll see. I'm trusting the guys who see him every day. He's kind of like the shiny sports car, right? And then our guy Sidwar, who's the Missouri commit, is just steady, makes the throws, and is putting up big numbers again in big games. So it's good.
The other Missouri guy who's there right now, Matt Zollers, is kind of, I feel like he's kind of the mix of those two, right? Like he's kind of that flashy guy that also has sort of the polished game a little bit too. So that we've talked about before, but that Missouri room it's one of the most random PA. Like, I think they would be one of the last schools you would expect to have 3 PA quarterbacks in a quarterback room.
Well, it's going to be a fun year for quarterbacks.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
It's June. We wanted to get into real quick, so maybe like looking ahead to fall. It's going to be here before we know it. Maybe you can talk about some storylines that interest us from the Mid Penn. Like I said, next week we'll try to do some state ones. So if you're a Mid Penn fan, I know you put together some storylines. Why don't you start us off with the division and kind of one that's sticking out to you?
Yeah, I guess we'll start in the Commonwealth. We talk a lot about the Harrisburgs and Bishop McDevitt's, and obviously McDevitt and Cedar Cliff were the 2 keystone that whipped into the Commonwealth Division last year for the first time in a while. I think it had been 8 or 10 years, since those 2 teams were outside of Keystone. But we talk a lot about those programs, and rightly so. I mean, they've been the winningest programs in the Mid Penn for the last, I would say, probably 15 years. I really sort of zeroed in a little bit on Central Dauphin. And I was sort of wondering if Coach Mack's program could kind of turn a corner. 3-7 last year. They were 6-5 in a quick exit in the district playoffs in 2023, and then obviously 3-7 in 22. That doesn't sound like the Rams. I mean, I don't want to. People are used to obviously Central Dauphin being so competitive, and I know last year was frustrating for Coach Mack and the coaching staff too. I mean, it was tough to even. It was such a young, sort of raw roster with a couple, got obviously some top seniors mixed in. But it was tough to even get lined up at times last year. I mean, and now you're walking in with more serious questions about the QB position. Obviously, between guys we presume are coming back in Mark Lebo, Aiden Oliver, Isaac Hodgkins, all those guys, that's only combined 6 pass attempts in an entire season behind Gavin Kirkpatrick, who obviously is graduated. Kirkpatrick did a kind of blue collar work, 61% completion rate, but under 1,000 yards total. 5 TDs against 6 picks. So obviously that's not great. And for a rush-heavy offense like Central Dauphin, they only averaged 109 rushing yards a game. So, that is not a sort of positive reinforcement that that the Rams can kind of turn a corner here. And beyond all of that, one of their best athletes, who was DeMar Robinson-Bell, he also graduated. So there's a lot of questions to be answered for Central Dauphin. Can they get back to being that weekly matchup that coaches just don't like because they sort of wear you down up front? They had some good linemen. Obviously, Zach Coleman played in the Big 33 game. He's moving on. So Central Dauphin to me is the one that is, it's an intriguing situation for them. And I feel like I'm not quite sure they can get back to that, at least as far as this year comes.
Yeah, well, they were at the spring fling, and I kind of had the same thought, just going to spring fling, thinking about you don't know, a lot of the roster is just kids you're not really super familiar with. They've been kind of searching the past couple of years. They're not that far removed from making a state championship. Like they're and playing St. Joe's Prep pretty tough. Like they have a couple kids in their team. The lineman Collier Book is a kid that's been getting some Division I interest. Lehigh and Ivies are offering him. Jaden Morgans is another guy, defensive end, that looked pretty good at the camp. But they've had linemen before. They had the year where they had 2 offensive linemen, and it's still like D1 offensive linemen. It still didn't all coalesce, and it is weird because they were that program that was super reliable right now, and I think it's also something that it's kind of symptomatic of this Commonwealth at this point. There really is just no forgiveness for any sort of slippage. There's so much depth. I've been saying that I think Cumberland Valley is going to be good this year. I think they're a team that people are just overlooking a little bit. I think that team's actually really talented. I really liked what I saw from Colton Stamey at the end of last year at quarterback. They've got, obviously, Big Oak. Saw him at the softball game just sitting on the hill looking like he was ready to go. They've got a bunch of talent, and you obviously have the Harrisburg and the McDevitt's and the state colleges. I mean, when we were talking about Chambersburg's new head coach, that's a program that maybe if you threw in the Keystone Division, they might go 8-4 every year. It's just that this is such an unforgiving division that if you kind of are that big dog and then there's just a year or two where the program kind of takes a hit, it's hard to recover. And you're watching track and field, you're seeing a guy like Gabe Scott win a state title in the sprint, cousin of Rico Scott. You're like, where was he on the football field for Central Dauphin the last 4 years? Like, sometimes you just miss out on some of these elite athletes, and it is you're right. It is fascinating that they are where they are now. But if they are to come back, I think it'll be because Glenn, he's such a program-oriented coach that he'll figure out a way to kind of reorient the program in the right direction. But I think I think it's going to be a step-by-step thing.
Well, Gabe's dad tried to talk him into playing football, but he didn't want to. He just wanted to stick to track. But yeah, I mean, you look at it here. They actually beat Will Howard downtown West to get to the state championship. They had a great line. Chad Layton, who had a really good, I think, PSAC career, played in like one of the senior all-star games, one of the lower level ones, but still, didn't even get an invite. Means you were pretty good. I don't think he got a shot with the team, but still got that. Bryce Tolman, who went on to Temple, I'm not sure if he's still there, but he was a big lineman. They had a great line. They had Timmy Smith at running back. They had Max Mosey at quarterback. He went to Holy Cross. I know he moved to wide receiver at Holy Cross because he really didn't have a big arm up, but he was almost like a high school Joe Montana. And I say that in that, like, he had a coolness about him. Right. You know, they won some games because of Max Mosey just having like a coolness about him. Like he was level headed in pressure situations. And Timmy Smith at running back was really good. He went to Millersville. I know he played there a year, and was actually starting some games. I think he retired, but he was a great running back. Point being, they had the quarterback, they had the running back, they had a couple skill guys. They've always had a line, Central Dauphin, that is, but they haven't had those skill pieces all together like they have in the past, and they just have not been able to put that together the last 4 or 5 years now. I mean, it's a big district. And then you talk about Cumberland Valley. I think it's been their time for a while. You know, Josh Oswald, I think, told us last year They're one of the few teams that I know of I think has to make some cuts because they get so many kids coming out. It's such a big district. So that is interesting too. I'll throw it out here as my interesting storyline for the Commonwealth guys. I think Harrisburg's a state title contender again. And Dan, you talked about quarterback position.
Yeah,
You got Michael. What's Michael's
Michael.
last name?
It's
Michael.
Michael. It's Michael Shank.
Michael Shank, I know, is a god, big kid who transferred over there from Trinity last year, saw some action. Jayon Lewis, who filled in there last year at quarterback after Sean Lee was ruled ineligible, was going to play receiver. You said, Dan, but we know he can play some quarterback too. I think that's going to be the big interesting. Who's going to play quarterback for Harrisburg? Because if they get that right, I think they could be dangerous.
It sounds like it's going to be Shank, and it sounds like they're pretty convicted that they really like the idea of Shank at quarterback, Coke on one side, Arp on another side, and Jayon in the slot. And if that works out, because you see it when you see Jayon play quarterback, you see how shifty he is, that he could really be a really special wide receiver too, especially in that slot. Because they're looking to replace the production Quincy Brandon gave him last year, which I thought was kind of underrated on the offense. Everyone rightly looks at Elias, who had a heck of a football season, but Quincy Brandon was also really good at receiver for them last year, so they're gonna have to replace that. They are super high on Bishop McDevitt transferred to Muir Arp though, so we'll see if that pans out. But they think there's we've talked about them kind of during the Fling episode, and then we kind of mentioned them for like future Player of the Year stuff. But you're right, like I think Ep and I did a whole podcast basically comparing them and McDevitt. It's gonna be a kind of tug and pull, and yeah, man, that Commonwealth division, you don't usually get two state champion level teams in one division. So
I mean, we didn't really bring up McDevitt. That's obvious. Obviously, the Stone Saunders era is gone. He's at Kentucky. He set all the quarterback records. How will McDevitt replace him? There's a lot of storylines there. But if we don't move it along, we're gonna have a 2-hour podcast. Epler, give us another one.
Well, we slipped by. Obviously, moved down to the Keystone Division, and I think Mechanicsburg's sort of in the same situation, just different parameters. Obviously, an unbelievable season last year, 11-1. Played McDevitt as tough as anyone he did in the postseason, and lost there in the district semis. So we talked so much about Josh Smith all the time, and at all points in the calendar, really, because he's such a superior athlete. But he was such a vital success to that program last year, football team. While he's off to Princeton now, can the Wildcats sort of, I don't want to say mirror 11-1, because I think that's damn near impossible without Josh Smith in the lineup. But you know what? Obviously, they're going to be a team to beat again in the Keystone. I think they are way ahead of the game. I think Dan and I agree defensively with the guys coming back. But you look at some heart and soul guys too, like Eli Reeder's moved on. Isaac Dolman has moved on. I mean, that right there is probably 3,000 yards of offense.
Justin Bardo's gone. He's playing Getty.
Right, and that's not counting what Smith's contributions what were. So is this the right time for a team like Hershey, which we talked about, Dan, last year, about taking a step up, Camp Sweeney being back, or Lower Dauphin to step up a few rungs? I think that's a really interesting upper tier in the Keystone.
Yeah, I was gonna say we talked about it, I think a little bit last episode, but just that Mechanicsburg defense I think got kind of underrated all year.
Yes.
I think that if they're gonna go back and kind of have another huge season, it's gonna look a lot different. Not a little different, a lot different. It's not gonna be every game's not gonna be 45-3 like right. It was. It might be 17-7 or something like that. My Keystone thing though is you kind of briefly mentioned on it. Maybe it's because I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid because I just watched their basketball team for an extended period. But I really think that this is a prime chance for Hershey to kind of have that big 9-1 type season. The only thing that could stop it is if Cam Sweeney has a big enough like AAU basketball season where he says he doesn't want to play football anymore. Because if you bring him back at quarterback, where he's a 1,000-yard rusher at quarterback, and also a pretty good defensive player to defensive back, you have him and Samir Edwards-Pace back at running back. You got a lot of defenders back as well. Coach Painter's always got those guys playing hard. I really think that they could be right in there in the mix in that division as well. Lower Dauphin's another school that also kind of has to worry about if one of their stars is going to play or not, just because of in Hunter Strom, just because of other sports. But I look at that Keystone, and I think the most dynamic athlete in the Keystone next year is probably Cam Sweeney, and I think that gives you a pretty big leg up.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have one single storyline. Redland and Northern obviously have new coaches. Redland's trying to get anything going. Got Jamie Thomas coming in, former NFL player. We know, he's going to probably do some good work with offensive line. I think he's trying to recruit the Halls. Like I said, trying to get anything going. Northern, they let go of Bill Miller. I felt like he probably done about as good as you could do with that program. They were fairly consistent.
They made a good hire
there.
They made a good hire, though.
Yeah.
Costello.
Yep. Yeah, I think people like Costello. Lower Dolphin, you brought up Josh Borelli. He won Coach of the Year a couple years ago for us. And I think he's probably done they're another team where I think they've been as good as they probably about could be every season under him. We say all that to say this. Shippensburg sitting there. The thing about Shippensburg is this. Outside of Anthony Smith, who's at Minnesota and is going to play in the NFL, I think, they don't necessarily have the skill guys or anything like that that's going to blow you away year after year. It's sort of interchangeable, in my opinion. And so he pretty much has the same kind of guys. There's no like elite running back like who's running a 4-4 there, but they just win games. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Shippensburg's there in the end too.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely think I think Dan's right. I think Hershey could be the squad to watch there. And a lot's going to hinge on Hunter Strom. Dan, we talked to Hunter. Obviously, he's our baseball player of the year. He's a Virginia commit, longtime Virginia commit who might start thinking about his future and saying, hey, listen, maybe it's not wise to play my senior year of football.
He did tell us Virginia staff encourages playing multi-sports, but they just lost their baseball coach. So
yeah, well, he's a hell of a linebacker, obviously, all-star linebacker who contributes greatly, too, on offense, too, as kind of that fullback hybrid kid who can do some damage. So, yeah, it'll be the Keystone's going to be wide open. I truly believe that. Sliding into Colonial, we'll probably get to the Capitol next week, but sliding into Colonial, if you look, pick any program, guys, in the Colonial between East Penn, like Hanna, Greencastle, West Perry, Gettysburg, significant talent. Lost significant talent at all of those spots, losses to graduation. Obviously, we think Hannah's probably best equipped to kind of sustain the losses that they had because of quarterback Torrin Evans being back, because of Jarrett Kern, the talented wideout, being back, and some other guys. Yender Mack obviously is back, big lineman, space eater, and obviously a strong kid to kind of emerge as sort of a leader in this one. And I'm not sure where we plant them preseason, but it's got to be high when you're talking the Colonial Division. So, and also too, Dan and I talked a lot last week about them sort of having something to prove too. Getting that consistency week in and week out has been difficult for them, but obviously a playoff contender at the very least for Susquehanna.
Yeah, so I totally agree about Hannah. We talked about last week. They're definitely going to be playing with motivation, after the Lavey-Heaton stuff. I think that this team, I haven't looked at their non-conference schedule, but their division schedule, they really shouldn't drop a game. You don't want to say this type of stuff, but they are talent-wise just above the rest of the division. They shouldn't have more than 2 losses at the end of the year. This is another division with some head. I think that we kind of figured with Carter McCauley graduating, Devin McCauley might be done, but they have Jason Thurston, who I believe was Juniata's athletic director. I'd have to double check that, but he's the Greencastle's new coach. At the Boiling Springs is a new coach as well. They're in the Capitol, but I can't even keep track of the divisions anymore. Yeah, I just think that when you have that senior quarterback in a division where everyone else is kind of looking for that new core, there's really no excuse for you to not go in and each and every week kind of be that team that kind of beats up on everyone else in not so nice language, I guess. But I'm excited to watch them. We say it every week, but they've just got guys at every position that could be gone to division. Zykeir Leaks is a kid that I think is going to blow up this year. I think he's going to kind of help replace. No one's going to replace that threat that Lex Cyrus was, but Zykeir Leaks is going to be that big play guy for them.
Let's knock it out real quick. Yeah, let's do the Capitol so we can close out the Mid Penn. What do you got sticking out there?
Well, I think to me it's the usual suspects. Obviously you've got some teams like Juniata who are tough as nails, and obviously Lime Mountain is always good. But I think it's still difficult. And again, it's only been it's 5 or 6 years now, maybe more. And we obviously morphed them all into 4 divisions. So the teams that were in the Liberty division are now sitting there a lot in the Capital. So you have to factor them in. But when it comes down to it, you always have to look at Steel High. You always have to look at Trinity. And I think Steel High for the challenges that they face, they're still going to be very athletic, and they're still going to be one of the teams to beat. So I was trying to kind of pick out maybe somebody beyond those two sort of, marquee or mainstay programs. And I didn't really come up with a solution yet. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, shout out to Steel High linebacker Angel Luciano, who just committed to Minnesota. Exciting young player there. It's a good question because if you look, Camp Hill's been really scrappy the last couple of years. They even won a district title a couple years ago in a shocker, but their quarterback, Drew Brandstetter, is now at Gettysburg. I think Alex Long was an all-state player, right? He's graduated. I believe Noah Doy, didn't he graduate, or was he a junior?
He's graduated.
He's graduated. I mean, they lost pretty much all of their top guys, and we know they didn't really have a deep roster anyway. So don't know what Camp Hill's going to do there. That's an interesting sort of storyline because Tim Bigelow's probably done one of the better coaching jobs too, only having a limited number of guys the last couple of years. I don't know. I mean, you could get a surprise. I think Steel High is probably the front runner.
Well, Trinity's not in the.
Yeah, Trinity's in Colonial now, so
like honestly, I think that a team like Line Mountain or Upper Dauphin could win the division. Like I think those teams have some returning talent that are like Max Johnson's one of the better players returning. They've got some. I'd have to double check who's some of these kids' years, but it could be a real. I think Steel High is the clear favorite, but it wouldn't shock me if one of those former Mid Penn Liberty division teams makes some noise in this division this year.
Well, you got Juniata too, who they have Jasper Sheps, right?
Yeah, they won a state playoff game last year.
So I think Steel High will win it. I think they'll have better athletes. They got the only D1 commit, but Jasper's a pretty good player, and I think there's a lot to be sorted out there. So those are some storylines we're thinking of for the Mid Penn Conference, guys. As we kind of wind down this podcast, sort of wanted to go to too. We got the unfortunate news over the weekend that a guy I know, Dan, you worked with him a lot, former Milton Hershey defensive end, linebacker, tight end, Michael Bleedy. He originally signed with Stonehill in 2023 out of Milton Hershey, and I believe was at Iowa Western or the community college where Sincere Bowers, Ryan Russo are right now. The Mid Penn. He was shot and paralyzed outside of his home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Terrible story. Obviously, he's still alive, thankfully. His dad had to GoFundMe posted up with his story over the weekend. Doctors have told him he won't walk again. They're not going to just rest with that. You can't blame them for that. They want to try to get him back to walking again. Prayers up to Michael. Dan, I know you worked with the kid. You probably did too. But Dan, I know you got some thoughts on Michael and having worked with him.
Yeah, I mean, he was just one of the, you run into kids a lot when you're doing this job that I would have been the worst interview of all time as a kid. I would have been so nervous talking to anybody about myself, but I also wasn't good at anything, so I didn't have anything to brag about. But you run into a lot of kids that are kind of standoffish, don't kind of want to get in and out of the interview, but Mike was never like that. Mike was always so personable. So it always seemed like he was happy to, talk, was super energetic, was also a heck of a football player. I always thought I always thought that he was, right on that verge of being that Division I player. He was explosive. He did a lot of things on the football field. And so when I saw that news, it just kind of hit you like a ton of bricks. And it just stinks that this type of stuff can happen to a kid that seemingly was on his way. I think he was at Stonehill initially, and was at a junior college program that was probably setting him up for in a transfer portal world to get a really good opportunity. So yeah, all you can do is just hope for the best and help any way you can, because I'm sure that family's going to need it, because that's not going to be an easy thing to deal with financially or emotionally.
Yeah, but I don't know how much you work with Bleedy, but Terrible story.
Yeah, it's just some things just don't make sense, and we see a lot of this now, unfortunately, in our society. But yeah, I mean, he's such a good guy. I mean, obviously, I remember it wasn't very long ago we were talking to Michael, and obviously a tremendous kid, tremendous player. And we see so many kids blossom at Milton Hershey, and obviously he's one of them. And this is just like Dan said, and we just our heartfelt condolences to his family, and obviously, just prayers to him. I mean, it's tough to swallow situations like this and just come up with the right words for it. It's just a tragedy. We just pray for him and the family.
Yeah, and this is a situation where everybody at Milton Hershey says really good things about him. I know you guys were impressed with him, working with him. I think it's a pretty good family. I did not realize his brother Philip played at Auburn and just signed with the Tennessee Titans. I will say the family's doing a GoFundMe to try to help pay for his medical expenses. Obviously, are going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
And don't be fooled by the fact that the headline there that his brother's an NFL player. Rookie free agents do not get, especially he may not end up making the team, right? Hope he does, especially now. Really rooting for him to make the team, but they don't get the kind of money to secure them in life as a rookie free agent by any means, or money to cover a situation like this. So we did a story. It's on Penn Live, but it's Bleedy, B-L-I-D-I. If you look on Facebook, social media, you'll find it. Google it. There's a GoFundMe out there. They were just trying to raise just $13,000. I think they've surpassed that. I can guarantee you, with a young man who's paralyzed right now, and being told that he won't recover from that, they're going to need a lot more than $13,000. I've had to do a GoFundMe over a bone marrow transplant. It's really a touching thing, and it really makes you feel like you have support when you see people backing you up like that. So if you can, search him out, give prayers up for you, Mike, and family, and just a sad situation. Because again, it was right in front of his home. He wasn't doing anything bad as far as we know. Just a terrible, terrible thing happened. So prayers up, guys. I think that's the podcast for this week. Dan, tell them how to find you on social media.
Dan_Sostek.
Tell them how to find you.
I'm at 3Jacker on X.
And I'm at Sports Bobby Linder, and our producer Megan is at Savvy Literate. She's always got a bunch of stuff going on when she's not getting trackers put on her car in Canada, which is kind of a crazy story that maybe we'll tell someday on some other time. PennLive.com. Till next week, we'll see you then.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed. Just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.